Welcome to SeaReport, a software designed to help you analyze and process your current profiler data. So what it operates on is current profiler data from Nortek instruments, and what it does is it reads in a data file. It performs quality control of your data, it performs statistical analysis, and finally gives you the option to generate reports. This is an instructional video just to give you an idea of how the software works. If you're interested in learning more about how the software works, then I encourage you to go down to the guide and read further on the subject matter that is of interest to you. So let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is we need to open up a data file, a current profiler data file. So we can either click here or select a file from here. So I'm going to select a file, and I'm going to select this Aqueduct current profiler file. And what you have is import options for your current profiler. Now remember that a current profiler measures currents at many different levels. And what we want to do in this software is we want to present data in a reduced format, so it's a little bit more manageable. So what we are going to do is we're going to select 3 different levels, a top, a middle, and a bottom. Now this is going to be referenced to either the water surface or the instrument, and we are selecting water here. And we also need to indicate if the instrument is pointing up or if it's pointing down. Now I know this is bottom mounted, so it's pointing up. And I'm going to select that the top is going to be at 10 meters water depth, the middle is going to be at 20 meters water depth, and the bottom is going to be at 30 meters bottom depth. Now during the importing step, we don't just read in the file, but we also perform the quality controls at that step. So here in the advanced options, you can see that there's different threshold levels and settings for performing the quality controls on the data. For the moment, when we read in the data file, we're going to leave it at the default values. So let's get started. Importing data first, reading in the data file, as I said, and then once we've read in the data file, then it is going to go on to the quality control of the data, and then finally extract out these 3 different levels that we're interested in. Okay, now that we've imported the data file, you will see here the data that is presented is the sensor data from the instrument. So you have a time history of the data. So you have the pressure in the blue, tilt in green, and temperature in red. The vertical axis on the left-hand side is decibar for the pressure, and on the right-hand side it is degrees for both the tilt and the temperature. The horizontal axis indicates the date and time for which the measurements were taken. Now over to the left-hand side here, you see that there's summary information for the details of the file that we have just loaded in. So it has things such as instrument name, data points, a stop and start, so forth. The next thing we can do is we can select a location for where the measurements took place. So I'm going to change this. We're going to zoom in a little bit and find a location that's of interest. Let's say the measurements were taken at the mouth of this small bay here. And I'm going to select update, select, and there we have it. The last thing that we can do here in this initial step is we can select a time for which the measurements are analyzed and the report is generated. So we can actually make adjustments to discard more data. So I'm going to bring these values in, so we just focus on this region here for all our statistical analysis and our report generating. Okay, let's talk a little bit now about viewing the data. First of all, I should point out that in this presentation of the sensor data, you will see that there are several pink strips. These pink strips indicate where the data did not pass its quality controls at the time of importing the data file. So these data will be ignored in subsequent analysis. Now for showing the velocities, which you're actually after, you can click up here where it says show velocities, and then you'll see the velocities at the 3 different levels that we specified at the time of importing the data file, so at 10 meters, 20 meters, and 30 meters from the surface. We can also show the directions. You can see that the plot gets quickly cluttered, so what I'm going to actually do here is remove the top level by clicking on this element in the legend, and also remove the bottom. So now the only thing that remains are the speeds and directions at the middle level. We still want to see a little bit of the finer structure here, so what I'm going to do now is zoom in by simply clicking and dragging over a selection in time. So now we can see the finer details of both the direction and speeds. You'll see at the bottom we can actually slide in this slider in time, so we can see this finer resolution at different times during this deployment. We can zoom out by clicking here. Okay, let's continue looking at data products. You'll see at the bottom of the screen there's several icons indicating different data products. Below each of these icons you'll see that there are 3 buttons indicating data that you can pull up and present. For instance, here we have the sensor data, and you have the pressure, tilt, and temperature, whereas the other ones have the measurements of the current at the top, middle, and bottom. So for instance, we can pull up the time series of the pressure by clicking on the P button, and you get the pressure presented here as a time series for the time selected earlier in the import and looking at the data. We also have the speed time series, so if we wanted to look at the middle, you could see a time series of the speeds. There's also histogram data, so we can have histograms, for instance, for the middle, which shows frequency of occurrence for different groups of speeds. We have the same presented for direction. Now we can actually combine these two to look at a matrix of the histogram. So on the top here I have direction, on the left hand side here I have speed, and the color indicates the frequency of occurrence as well as the numbers inside of each of these boxes. The right hand side gives a sum of the percentages for the speeds, as well as the bottom showing the sum percentages of direction. We can also look at data in the terms of a rose plot or a compass plot. So we have max speed, the mean speed, and the flow. If we look at, for instance, the maximum speed, we can see that we present a compass with this maximum speed for the top level, which is overlaid the map location that we specified earlier. Other statistics that are included are pure numbers that are in table format, which give you the middle level. For instance, here we have the mean, the maximum, minimum currents, and different other statistics for currents. We can also look at the table direction, which gives the mean, the maximum currents of the 50 and 10-year storms, or interval return period. It's also interesting to look at the report of the quality control. So you see down here at the bottom there's an icon for quality control for the 3 different levels, and I'm going to select the top level, 10 meters from the surface, and what we have here is a summary of all the different modes under which the data did not pass its quality control. Here we have the start index, the end index, the period of time over which it failed, and a check indicating which mode it failed under. Here we are indicating that it was a low signal to noise ratio under which this data failed. You also note that up here where this indicates the QC pass or fail for where the cursor is located. So if I move the cursor down here and I hover over a location that's pink, you'll see the reason for which the data failed the quality control. It's also important to note that data that fails quality control is not included in the other estimates of statistics in presentation of data for analysis. Now finally, what we can do is we can generate a report from all these different types of analysis that we've presented so far. So down here in the right hand corner you'll see there's an icon for report, and it comes in two different formats. You can either have it in an Excel or you can have it in Word. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to generate a report in Word. So it gives me an option to specify a title for the report. So say it is the report test company Nortek, and include a map in the report, and now generate the report. Specify location, report to, and save. Now we're almost finished generating the report, and the template that we have will bring up the Word template, and as you can see here we have all the different pages showing the different plots that we have generated down below in the software here. So that concludes the introductory video for learning SeaReport, and I thank you for listening along.